Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be talking about a strange weather pattern that is occurring across the United States that is not typical for November. We are continuing to see a warmer trend of temperatures, along with a lot less rainfall, with some hit or miss storms across the country. I'm going to break down what is ahead for the next several days in terms of our weather pattern and why there could be some big changes as we head later into this month. But let's first begin with what's happening across the United States today, and we'll first begin with much of the Midwest and the Great Plains, where there really isn't a whole lot of activity right now. We do have some cloud cover in parts of the upper levels. Again, we are currently looking at the infrared imagery, giving us an idea of the cloud cover across the United States. Notice there is plenty of that stretching from the Pacific Northwest back into the Midwest, and there's actually a storm that's been ongoing in the Pacific Northwest that has brought several inches of rainfall. We've seen some areas upwards of almost a foot of rain in Washington and even in Western Oregon, which is pretty crazy, but we are seeing atmospheric rivers ongoing, which we saw some of that last December back last year, and we saw a lot of that bring a lot of rainfall to areas like California. Now we're seeing that further up to the north, and that's going to continue for the next several days. Now we also have another big storm that's actually ongoing, but this one's actually over in Canada. We saw some impacts across parts of the Great Lakes region and as well as the Midwest, but overall it's mostly just rainfall. We've had some snow with this, but all the snow overall has been back up in Canada. We've even seen a little bit of ice out of that as well. But again, nothing too crazy for at least us in the United States overall. Back over in the Northeast as well, there will be some showers overall for the next several hours and as well as into tomorrow morning. But again, it's a pretty ordinary storm for the United States, a little bit different for Canada, where they are seeing several inches of snowfall. Now, heading into the next several days, we are going to have a pretty large-scale cold front across the United States, so let's kind of show you that a bit more in detail here. So here are the temperatures for tomorrow. These are your high temperatures. Notice we have a lot of warm air across much of the United States, primarily across areas like Texas, where we are in the 80s, and even the low 90s for tomorrow afternoon. Florida in the same story for at least some low 80s and 70s across those areas. As we go into Wednesday, you are going to notice where the cold front is. Take a quick guess for yourself. It's actually going to be located from the Midwest back into parts of the southern plains. That temperature difference about 10 to 15 degrees on each side. So we're talking about like 70s and even low 80s in parts of southern Missouri, northern Missouri in the mid 60s. So a bit of a difference there as we go into Wednesday. As we go into Thursday, that cold front much more defined across much of the southern tier of the United States. Notice North Texas will drop from the 70s into the 50s, maybe even some upper 40s for high temperatures going into Thursday. That cold front, by the way, extending pretty far off to the north. So again, nice little cool down as we go into Thursday. By the time we get to Friday morning, temperatures will be, for low temperatures, back down into the freezing category across the Midwest and the northern plains. Meanwhile, in the southern tier, we'll be talking about 50s and some 60s. Not nearly as dramatic as that Arctic blast that we had a couple of weeks ago. Now, for the long-term temperature outlook, we are going to still stay above average, at least through tomorrow and Wednesday. By the time we go into Thursday, that warm air is going to be a much more representative across parts of the mid-Atlantic. Meanwhile, below normal temperatures returning to the southern tier, including parts like Texas and Oklahoma. By the time we get to the weekend, we're going to be around average across most of the country. There's no big difference here. Actually, overall, most of the United States will be within 5 degrees of average temperatures for Saturday afternoon. That's pretty crazy. That doesn't happen very often, but with overall, maybe southern Texas being that one exception. As we go into Sunday into Monday of next week, warmer air will start to return. You might be wondering, will we get a big storm so we're overall going to see colder weather? I will talk about more on that here in just a moment, but probably not, at least right now in the long-term computer models. Not really seeing any big indications of a major cool down, at least going into mid-November. I do think by the time we get to Thanksgiving, we are going to see another shot of cold air, maybe even a cold blast or an Arctic blast once again as we go later into this month. And again, more details on that here in just a second. Here are the high temperatures again for actually what we saw today. So again, notice in southern parts of the United States like Texas, we were in the mid to upper 80s in some areas. This is going into Thursday. Notice there will be a big change. Again, this is the high temperatures, not even the low temperatures. 50s in comparison to the mid to upper 80s back over in West Texas. So again, we're going to see some pretty big changes across the entire country, including even areas over in the southeast, by the way. Still going to stay warm there, but it will cool down a little bit as we get closer to the weekend. So that will definitely be something to look forward to. All right, looking at the future radar across the United States, we'll kind of break down what we're looking at in terms of the overall weather pattern, where we're going to see the big storms over the next several days, where will there be rain, where will Will it be dry? And do we have any severe weather upcoming? I'm going to answer all that for you here right now. So overall, going into tomorrow, we have a couple of different features. So again, we have an exiting storm, basically meaning it's leaving the region that we cover, which is the United States. Back down in the southeast near Florida, we have a high pressure system down there that's going to keep areas dry and warm. And then back over behind this low pressure system, we have a high pressure system. And then behind that, we also have a small little storm that's back over near Montana. So the next storm that we're going to be basically watching between now and about Thursday is this low pressure system that's back up near North Dakota and Montana. So this going into Wednesday afternoon, we're going to be watching a couple of different areas for rainfall. Right in here is the main area. So we'll have another developing low pressure system that'll be back over in parts of the Midwest near Illinois, bring some rainfall. Another area that does not even show itself on the future radar at all on Wednesday, because there's no low pressure here, would be back actually down here in South Texas. We are going to get some strong southerly winds going, and what that'll do is basically allow for moisture to go from south to north and allowing for rainfall chances to increase across that cold frontal boundary going into Thursday. So keep that in mind if you're back down in the southern tier of the United States. A little bit of snowfall, by the way, back up in Canada. Not really relevant to the United States, though. As we go into Thursday, rainfall will start. Notice that right by around Thursday, around lunchtime or so, rainfall starting to increase across the southern plains. I'm not expecting any severe weather with this. If there is any severe weather, it would be a very minimal event. Notice our storm is back over here to the north and east, so we have a couple of different areas to watch for. Low pressure is going to be located back over in the mid-Atlantic region. Rainfall ongoing across parts of New England. Maybe a little bit of some snow flurries as well. Going to Friday, rainfall does continue across the Gulf Coast. Really, really good news for Louisiana, because we will see some rainfall there going into Friday. That is really needed. There's a serious drought going on in Louisiana right now, so that'll definitely help. As we go into Saturday, Sunday, into Monday, rainfall will continue across the southern tier of the United States, primarily near the Gulf Coast. And as we go into next week, high pressure builds again, and this will basically be a repellent from seeing any major storms as we go at least into early next week. Could we see some big storms beyond Tuesday? That's definitely possible, but right now in the long term, I'm not really seeing any major storms in the forecast, at least between now and about Tuesday of next week. Again, we have some pretty good news in terms of rainfall. Here's the Weather Prediction Center's forecast over the next 7 days in terms of rainfall. Keys at the bottom of your screen here. Again, notice we're going to be watching for a lot more rainfall between Louisiana and Texas, and even down into parts of the Dixie Alley. We'll be looking at the potential for maybe around a quarter, half an inch, maybe even an inch of rain, and we'll take any rain at all across parts of Louisiana and Arkansas. Desperately needed rainfall there, and also the Northeast. Notice the central and northern plains. We're going to be pretty much dry as a bone over the next 7 days. Very low rain chances overall. In terms of the temperature outlook, between the 14th, which is Tuesday of next week, until the 20th, which is Monday of the following week, it is likely we're going to be looking at above average temperatures. Unfortunately, if you're looking forward to winter weather, it's going to be a bit of a pause until we see that. It'll probably at least be until the end of the month until we see a major cold blast or anything like that. But again, above average temperatures are likely for most of the United States. The West Coast would be the only exception. And then rainfall wise, we'll be looking at above average precipitation for the West Coast and southern tier. Meanwhile, areas like the Midwest and the Northeast will be dealing with below average precipitation for the next several days. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.